to this clinic on the saxophone music for the ATSSB All-State Band. Our clinician today is the head of the music department at Sam Houston State, Dr. Scott Flood.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you. What I'll first do is I'll kind of go over this packet because it's a little bit different than what you may expect to be on the interior parts of it. In the etudes, which we will go over, I want to just make sure that you can understand or read the key that I put at the top for the fingerings. And the latter part of the packet also shows a whole lot of the philosophies that I have on fingerings. Understand that while I believe in them and I have documentable evidence to support them, they are nothing more than a suggestion for you. I hope you'll take them, but there are certainly other options out there. I also tried to, which we will talk about in context, tried to write out the fingering for the long C sharp that I recommend, and I'll also show you some derivatives of that that are common fare for us as saxophonists. I went through each etude and marked the suggested fingerings for the areas where we have some options. So I want to make sure that we go over those as we do. I also put in my fingering selections as far as there's kind of rules of thumb that you can, rather than making it random. I run into students and teachers all the time that say, you should use this fingering, or you should use that fingering. And the reality of it is that you really need to have all of them. And I usually have particular circumstances where I think what I use, the rule for me is the technically most proficient fingering for the given circumstance. And that's where these philosophies are coming from. The full range scales is something that I have all my students do, from beginners to professional. The full range scale is not like you need to know the notes, but you do understand the pattern. But more importantly, the fingerings that I suggest are marked in the scales. One of the things that I normally recommend is that whenever you as a player or run into a challenge in a piece, or you're trying to work on something, some of the best ways to help prepare yourself for a piece is to extract the elements out of the music and work on them fundamentally. For instance, the two etudes that we're covering today, one's in G major, the other one's in B flat major. So we take our G major scale and practice it full range. Take the B flat major scale, obviously you should be doing all 12, but make sure that you're working on the keys of the pieces that you're going to play. That's going to help facilitate your technique. Practice techniques. This is something that's a little bit different that you may or may not have run into in some of your other clinics, and or something that you don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about. I am very much into creative practice techniques. I'm very much into the psychology of performing and the aspects of the left and the right side of the brain. I was about your age, those of you that are in high school or even early college for me, where I realized that this animal required just about as much practice as the metal did. And once I began to understand the brain and how that was affecting me, because what would happen is one time I would play and people would say I played 10 and 20 years older than I am. It was just fabulous. Other times I would crash and burn. And I'm trying to go, I don't get it. I don't know what's going on. And that's why I delved into the psychology. And I usually make a lot of sports analogies. If you ever watch the Olympics and stuff where you're training for 4 years for your 1 30-second race, you're training to be your best on that 1 30-second. That's what we do on a daily basis as a musician. So understanding, and you see in sports all the time, well, they went to a sports psychologist so that they could, really be their best on that day. That's what we're doing here. These creative practice techniques help develop the technical facility and what I call positive action that is necessary for good technique and good consistent performing. The practice and the mental game that I'm referring to, the 3 levels of practice is something that is solely mine, or at least I think it is, if I may have been influenced from somewhere. But level 1 is the technical aspect. That's usually the level that a lot of people don't ever get out of. It's just simply solved by, can I play this passage or can I not? Like if you can play it, you've really satisfied level 1. The circumstance I run into all the time is a student misses a passage. They go straight to that passage, they turn it upside down, forwards and backwards, do all the rhythms that are on the page right before this, go back, and they come up to that passage and they miss it again. The problem is that they can play it already. What they need to work on is context, getting across the bar line and performing it once they've gotten into the situation. That's level 2. Getting to the part where you scoot back a couple of beats and get yourself practice getting into the passage or whatever it is. And then the final phase is continuity and consistency. The only way to do this is slow practice. I know every single solitary person in this room from someone has heard that you need to slow practice. Is there anyone who has not heard that? That's what I thought. And the thing is all of us go, I don't need to do that. I mean, if I can do it slow already. That's because you're thinking on level 1. What you have to realize is that what you're trying to do is practice for being your best and being accurate on that day that you show up for your All-State audition. And that means going through and really showing the road. By the way, the faster we play, the less the mental is involved. Your fingers are kind of on the roll, so you have to let them do their work. So there's some stuff there for you to read regarding that. I should have put a footnote in there, so I'm just going to give you a recommendation of a book called The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galloway. Absolutely fabulous. That's where all of this comes from for me. There are several other books out there, but that's my favorite one. There's also, it's so popular in the music industry that they came out with one called The Inner Game of Music. Please get the one that says Inner Game of Tennis. Actually talking about something outside of music had much more effect than when they actually try to take the animal on itself. Okay? It's an easy read. It's been a while, but I think it's only about 120 pages. It's not hard, but you'll have to read it a couple of times to get used to it. Not only will it help your music, but it just helps you in life. Okay, there's my big soapbox statement. We'll move on. Etude number 5 we'll start with, your Lyrical Etude. On this, obviously, it's your opportunity to display your tone, your control, your vibrato, your phrasing. There's not a whole lot of tricks to this, except for it is a really good opportunity for you to use your long C sharps. And in this case, it's an opportunity for you to use them in a technical fashion. What's called long C sharp, the actual principle of the fingering is the G key with the octave key. This is only used for third space C sharp. We use it on saxophones for 2 different reasons. One, C sharp naturally on the horn usually tends to be flat. This brings the pitch back up. 2, also since there are no keys down, it tends to be a very thin and kind of sounding note. This adds texture and a little bit more body to the note. To you at the mouthpiece, it may sound fuzzy. Usually to the audience, it just has a lot more tone and timbre. Now, the right hand, the right hand, any of the notes in the right hand can be left down to facilitate technique and or to readdress tuning. For instance, if it brings the C sharp too high, you can put something down in the right hand to bring the pitch back down. Does everyone understand that? In this piece, each time that you see the L, almost every single time, it's serving as a lower neighbor to a D. Almost every time. There's 2 instances where it does not. And so the easiest thing to do is just to go ahead and leave the right hand down. And so that all that you're moving are these 2 fingers. How many of you have cacked, or your saxophone kind of squawks when you're coming across what they call the break? We don't usually think about that too much on the saxophone, but as you're going across, you get sometimes a cack or a squawk. It does happen for some. This avoids that. You will not have that problem. So also you're just minimizing the amount of fingers you're having to move, and makes it Sound better, helps the intonation. Chromatic F sharp, everyone should understand that fingering. Whenever you have a situation where the F sharp is adjacent to the F natural, I usually recommend the chromatic F sharp, unless there's a reason that you can't use that, like you have a D sharp or somewhere that finger needs to be right before that. I've marked through the suggestions for the A sharps. The little circle is bis. In case you're not familiar, it's this little key below the B. And I teach that as a hand position, not as a fingering. Meaning this is what our normal hand position is. And then if you're going to use bis or you're going to do something in the key of B flat, your finger just slides down into a hand position. Okay? We do not advocate rolling the bis key. As long as there's a note in between the two notes, that's when you can kind of lean down on it, come up to it, and lean out. So you're not rolling adjacent, right next to each note. One fingering that I do suggest, alternate fingering, is on your last line, very first measure, is a great opportunity to do one of our alternate fingerings for D. And that is what's called the C2 key, and is fingered with your E flat palm key. This will take some time for you to work on timbre, and I encourage you to work with the tuner to make sure you, because initially probably just coming out of the chutes when you try to do it, you'll be sharp on the note. But usually when we're coming from a two-note or a one-hand note, going across the break to a D, and then back to a no-fingered note, which is the situation here, that's primary time to use one of the alternate fingerings so that you're not going from one finger to 7 fingers, I'm counting the thumb, to a D, and then back to nothing. That's a whole lot of mechanics going on. The horn is venting up here, then all of a sudden it has to vent down here and then pop up back here. This allows to keep everything in one aspect of the horn. What I'm doing there, if this reed holds up, it allows me to be very soft and with a lot of finesse to do that. You're still welcome to use the regular D. And by the way, it's a lot easier to control the pitch of the C2. Your D tends to be sharp all the time, right? And so this way you can help keep the pitch down. A big bone for me, you have a lot of trills in this etude. It's a slow etude, right? So it should be an expressive etude, right? So all your trills should be expressive. One thing I want to ask you is, what is a trill? Right, someone's going to tell me this, well, you wiggle your finger up and down like that. And that's true, but it's an ornament. An ornament should decorate what you're trying to play. Right? Think of your Christmas tree or any type of ornament you have in your house. Should decorate the tree, enhance the tree. The decoration should not attract attention to itself. It's supposed to enhance what it's around, right? So you want to make sure that your trills are expressive. What does that mean? I would start them all slow and grow through them. One of the things as a player for me that really bothers me is something that I call unwarranted accent, where students will have weight and accent in their playing that's unwarranted in the music. Ornamentation is like a, like a magnet for accent. What you don't want to do is have your trills, I'm going to grossly exaggerate this. Whenever they do the trill, there'll all of a sudden be this huge accent on it. You've got to nest it within the phrase that you're trying to play. My last stupid analogy, which I'm famous for, is I think of painting usually when I'm playing. And I'm not a painter, and I haven't studied painting. I don't really know anything about it, except for I always hear them talk about the brush stroke of the artist, right? Very smooth brush stroke, very clear lines and nice colors. That's exactly what I'm trying to do as a musician. When you have unwarranted accent, it's like the painter was, had the brush and the paint going across this way, and then someone bumps his or her arm, and all of a sudden the line becomes jagged. So you want to be careful with your ornamentation. And really let the trills really fit within the line and not be accented on the front. They do not have to go that fast. Okay? Any questions on anything that I've said so far? Okay, let me see.